Eggs is a podcast about all things creative, regardless of what that means to you. From the creativity involved in launching a business, building a brand, crafting an entertainment career, or whatever, we talk about the process of growing your egg from start to finish. Today's show is brought to you by Goodside Skateboards. Go to www.goodsideskateboards.com for great deals on decks and awesome t-shirts and pretty much anything you can think of. Well, not quite. Anyways, enter Egg Show, that's EGGSSHOW, when you check out. And get 20% off? Yeah, I think it's 20%. Anyways, Egg Show when you check out to get 20% off at goodsideskateboards.com. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at Deli Fresh Threads. They're a Florida-based clothing company. They specialize in t-shirts and other apparel. And they celebrate what they call the king of meals, the sandwich. Check out their website, delifreshthreads.com. And make sure you enter Egg Show when you go to check out for 10% off. That's EGGSSHOW. Get 10% off when you check out. All right, delifreshthreads.com.
Right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew. We gon' make it all happen right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew. We gon' make it all happen right here, right now. Calling out to all area crew. We gon' make it all happen right here, right now.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. We've got an exciting show this week. It's our first ever co-show, as we're calling it, or a show where we're doing not just an Eggs podcast, but we're also doing one with our dear friends out east at the Creative South podcast.
Hello. You've mentioned them many times.
Yeah,
how are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, so our guest, his guest, we're all guests, is Jason Frostholm. He's the host of the Creative South podcast. We've talked about him actually a bunch of times behind his back because we haven't stopped talking about WMC Fest since it happened. Basically we met a lot of great people at that event and they've served as great guests on this show. And so we talk about WMC Fest about every third show. And so, but Jason is actually the inspiration behind Eggs existing. So when we,
I'm either very happy about that or I feel sorry for you. One of the two.
Yes, so far so good, but it might be, we'll see how I feel next year. So when we went out to WMC Fest, I guess it's been 2 years ago now. We met out in Cleveland, Ohio, myself and Jason, as well as a number of other guests we've had on our show. And Jason was running around with this rad little Porto kit, this little portable podcasting setup where he had like a little Zoom recorder and a couple mics. And he was just like grabbing people, just like pull them into a dark corner and do a little podcast with them.
That's not scary
nothing
at all.
creepy.
Yeah. Hashtag me too.
I plied them with liquor first, so.
Even better. So anyway, I was, kind of paying attention to what he was doing because I thought this was pretty slick and I liked how he was kind of doing stuff on the fly and all that. And I had been for some time trying to think of a method or a way to start generating some additional content, things to promote my business or to promote whatever it was we were up to because we're always up to something. And one of the ideas was a podcast. That was sort of an obvious one. But, for anybody who knows me, I have no shortage of ideas that never do anything. And so a podcast was one of those. But after meeting Jason in Cleveland, and he also, this doesn't sound creepy at all, showed up at my hotel room at about midnight, and we did the podcast together.
He got you in a dark corner and then showed up at your hotel room?
This time he just pinned me in my room.
Did you give him a key while you were there?
And I hadn't had anything to drink. I was a willing participant.
Yeah, he was sober at that point.
But Jason came over and he put me on his show on the Creative South podcast, and which was actually my first and only podcast I've been on outside of this one. And so, but that sort of thing was, just the, I guess, to keep it in context, the egg I needed to start moving forward on the podcast. So when I got back home after Cleveland, which was really good for me in a lot of ways, Cleveland, I came home pretty inspired and feeling good, but, from all the people we'd met. when I came home, we started ruminating on this idea of a podcast and putting something together. And
I think we had kind of talked.
Yeah, we talked about it before, but nothing ever came from it. And but after this, I was extra motivated. So I sat down, and me and Mike are always kind of scheming and working on things, and so we decided podcast, and voila, here we have a podcast. So, but you guys, the listeners, and everybody else has Jason to blame for that.
Yep, it's all his fault.
Anyway,
so like I said, I'm either very excited about that or I'm very sorry, depending on how this goes.
Exactly. So the reason for a co-show, or the reason we're doing this together, is a podcast that's basically going to be published on our network and on the Creative South Podcast Network here at some point, is the recently, sort of like, a couple months back, Jason had hit me up about being on Creative South again, which I was really excited to do. And I hit him back, and Mike and I had been doing the podcast for a little while then, and so it just occurred to me, hey, why don't we try and do one of these collaborative shows where we do together? That way, both, because I know Jason's a busy guy and we're busy, and if we could do one show that pleased them all, then that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Sure, two birds, one stone.
Exactly. And so that's what we decided to do. After a couple scheduling faux pas and reschedules and things like that, we finally made it happen. And our first recorded show, the first recorded Eggs show of 2018, is here with our pal Jason.
Yeah, I couldn't be more happy.
So welcome from our side. Yeah.
Now, thank you, and thank you for joining me. So I got to give you credit here, because when you suggested the co-show, I hadn't thought of doing something like that before, and now this is third or fourth one I've done, and they're a lot of fun. The first one was nerve-wracking and just complete mass chaos, with some buddies of mine on a podcast called Creatoring.
Creatoring, that's a cool name.
Yeah, and they've got a really loose format show to begin with, and they're both fun, and they take pride in their weirdness. I can't match it. My wife may argue with that, but at least most of the time I can't match it. But it was fun. It was at times like herding cats, but in a good way. And
we'll do our best.
Yeah,
I'm a notorious stepper on her, like that example just then, and so I will.
I will too.
Yeah, I will constantly be stepping on you. However, in the spirit of hurting those cats, we'll try and allow you to speak.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, and for those, we're on opposite ends of the country right now too, so it is difficult, not being in person and not having a video feed at this moment. We just have audio.
Yeah,
and so it's difficult because I can't read that Jason's about to speak. I just. I can't shut up, so I end up talking over everyone.
Yeah, it's normal though, so we're used to it.
I know. So you guys use Zencastr, and that is one feature that I really wish that they had, is just a video feed, so you could, everything I love about Zencastr. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think there's a way to do it. I just haven't dabbled with it. They have something where you can attach Skype to it, but I don't know if the bandwidth's a problem or what.
Yeah, I've done it with Skype, and the bandwidth ends up being an issue, and things get out of sync, and it gets weird.
Yeah.
So, but I love what Zencastr does. So.
Well, they're not 100% either. I've had some nightmares with them where it turns into 4 or 5 hours of editing just because it's...
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the thing. Like when we began this show, so like we did 1 or 2 shows in person, and then I went to Spain for 5.5 weeks or 6 weeks.
Slacker.
And so, so we did the show from Spain for like 6 weeks, and we did it over Zencastr, and it really accommodated for me being gone and being really far away to boot. And so it worked pretty darn good. So we started just ranting and raving about how great Zencastr was. I even like the week after I got back, I went down to Adam Carolla's podcast masterclass or whatever it was called. And I went down and I even pitched it to Adam Carolla's producer, this guy Dawson. And I told him, I was like, hey man, this is the best thing. It'll revolutionize everything. It'll change your life. And then like a few weeks later we were using it and we were like so out of sync.
Yeah. We were getting these weird glitches in the audio where you'd hear like a fuzz and then like it would push the audio for that word on whichever side it had the issue off by like 3 seconds. So you'd have some weird delay. And the only way I was able to kind of get it back in sync was my headphone bleed. I could hear the other guy talking in my mic, and I was able to kind of adjust the audio over to where it needed to be. But yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I've had to do that a few times, and I'm not an audio expert, so that gets nerve-wracking for me.
Oh yeah, it's not fun.
All right. Well, to get out of sort of the podcast weeds,
Sure.
let's. I mean, for me, it's wildly interesting. I don't know if
everybody else, it might not be.
Yeah. So let's ask sort of the first legitimate question of you, Jason. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you came into the design world, all that stuff?
Sure. I kind of grew up all over the place. Mostly raised in the Midwest, but I've been down in the South for longer than I was ever in the Midwest now. I guess I date myself when I say something like that. But I was always the artistic kid. I always sucked at sports, especially anything that involved a ball or a puck or anything like that. Eye-hand coordination is not my strong suit. So I always liked drawing and sketching and was a pretty nerdy kid at that. So, again, dating myself, I came up when the Atari 2600 was just coming out.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say that I had one.
the little, what was it? The joystick, was it?
The little joystick.
The 2600 had a joystick.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they got advanced the next round that had a little dial thing that was...
What was it? Knight Rider, was that the game?
I had my favorite one was Pitfall. I liked
Pitfall and Joust were my favorite games.
Yeah, Joust was good, and I can't remember, was Dig Dug on that too? Maybe Dig Dug was a little newer.
I think you could get a
remember.
Dig Dug on there.
Yeah, Dig Dug was my jam too. I liked that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up then. I was always kind of nerdy, but I actually had my history with the Mac goes back to because my eye-hand coordination is so bad. When we started taking like typing classes and all and handwriting and things like that, I was horrible at it. So I don't know. I don't remember this part, but a teacher or principal or somebody recommended that my parents get a computer. And this was right when the Mac came out.
The Apple
first
IIgs
Mac. No. The first Mac.
Okay.
Yeah, this is me dating myself. This is 1984, 1985.
And no worries, there's no judgment here.
And I'm 10 years old at this point. We got that, and I loved playing on it because even at that point there was a drawing program on there, and I could draw on the computer. And I never did much with it. And then school goes on, and I'm still taking art classes, but I'm never doing anything on the computer. And then I get to college, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, and I go in right out the gates declaring that advertising is going to be what I want to do, and thankfully didn't stray too far from that. But, long story short, there was an extended hiatus, and when I got back in school, I decided to be a graphic design major. And then, went through college, got my degree, and right out the gate, went to work in the glamorous world of print production.
Ooh.
Which, yeah... I will say the one good thing that came out of there is I met my wife. So,
well, hey, that's better than most people get. Most people just get,
a paycheck,
ink
and that's
you can never wash off, or the.
Well, I wasn't that far into the print production. I still was playing on the computer.
On the digital side. Okay.
Yeah. I did. I mean, I had to make plates every once in a while, but very rarely. So did that. Was there for about a year, and it just paid so horribly that I had to move on. And my wife and I weren't dating at that point. It was about a year after that we started dating. And then I just held kind of a series of jobs working in agencies or a couple failed startups, things like that, bouncing around until I found the world of in-house. And I've had a few in-house roles, but my current role, I work for a engineering firm, like not software engineering, but build stuff, mechanical, chemical, civil, structural, that type of engineering, where I'm the creative director. And I've been there for 6 years now. It'll be 6 years in May.
How is it working, as a creative in an analytical world? Engineers, I mean, they're pretty straightforward. It's, it has to be like this. And then, being creative and actually, I guess it's two different things, but,
yeah, it's challenging. It's taught me a lot about pitching stuff. Because I'm trying to find a way to say it where it doesn't sound like I'm talking bad about engineers. In case anyone
where you don't lose your job.
Yeah, exactly. Where I don't lose my job.
Where it's two different parts of the brain, though, so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's different parts of the brain. So engineers, while they can envision how a structure is going to go together or how these schematics are going to work and come to create something, which isn't something that I can do. I look at the stuff and it's like, that's just a bunch of lines and numbers overlapping each other. I have no idea what the hell that means. But on the opposite side of that, when I'm, taking an ad to them or taking logo design or something like that to them, they can't necessarily visualize the use cases of how it would be used across different platforms and how things like that. So I've got to be very good at internally pitching things to those clients. So I've got to explain it a lot. I've got to, show examples of things mocked up. So it's gotten me pretty decent at pitching things.
Yeah, well, and that's, in advertising or any, sort of creative field, that's a huge thing to be good at.
Yeah.
So, because I know for a lot of people that doesn't come easy. A lot of the creatives I know, myself included, are just, pitching and doing that sort of work isn't really our forte.
So. Oh, it's my least favorite part of the job. I will say that. Well, it's not my least favorite part of the job. My least favorite part of the job is doing budgets, but but after that, it's my least favorite part of the job because I get sweaty palms every time beforehand, and get worked up and frustrated, and I'm just worried that they're not going to grasp it or I'm not going to explain it well, and sometimes that happens, and more often than not, it doesn't now after having been there for so long, but. It does happen.
Yeah. Okay. So from there, now I know you as from the Creative South podcast. That's how I met you, or the context I met you in. But so how does all that work? Like, what's your relationship with Creative South? Why is there a podcast? Like, how did that come to be? That sort of thing. We have talked in the last few episodes of our show about the Creative South conference that's coming up. Because we plan to attend unless we procrastinate too much longer. But
don't procrastinate much longer. There's still plenty of tickets left, so go out and get yours.
So, but it is our grand plan to attend.
The reason I say don't procrastinate is because hotels will sell out before tickets will sell out. But from what I understand, there's some decent Airbnbs right in the downtown area. So.
Yeah, I was looking a little bit. I actually needed to get into the Creative South website and do some looking just to see where the venues were. So, because I was looking at Airbnb yesterday and trying to find a spot because we were actually thinking, and we were going to try and maybe bring the show on the road and meet some people.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so we were thinking about trying to find an Airbnb.
We'll talk about something about that afterwards too.
Perfect. Cool. So anyway, tell me about how you got involved with Creative South, the organization, I guess, and then when the podcast came about and how that happened.
Sure. So my first year, my wife and I actually won tickets to our first Creative South back in 2014. And I've told this story a bunch before. I realize your listeners may not have heard it, but I'll give the short story. Peter Del Tondo, who's on staff with it, was giving away tickets through a side project of his, and I had learned about Creative South maybe 2 weeks before that he was giving out the tickets because there's another kind of webcast called Design Recharge with Diane Gibbs.
I was listening to her podcast with you earlier today to gather some information on you.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Yeah, and she lives like 15 minutes away from me. So I was, watching that. I learned about Creative South, and then like 2 weeks later, Peter's on there and he's talking about that he's giving away tickets. So just on a lark, not thinking that I'd win because I never win anything, put in for it, and technically, I was not the first winner. I was like the fourth winner, but the first four people that he called, because it was such short notice, couldn't get off work or couldn't arrange anything to be able to get up to Columbus and go to the conference. So thank you for all of those people who couldn't make it. I'm sorry that you weren't able to, but I'm really happy that you weren't able to as well.
Well, so you have them to blame for the podcast.
I do. So yeah, so the first year my wife and I went up there, we weren't even able to get up there for the full conference. Like we got up there the Friday that it started and had to leave midway through the Saturday that it ended. So we missed the kickoff party that's every Thursday night, and we missed kind of the wrap up because it was such short notice. We were like scrambling to get, in-laws and my parents and all to watch the kids and, find a hotel room and all of that stuff. And it ended up working out. And I'm so grateful that it did. But the first year that we went, Tina, that's my wife, she and I were kind of wallflowers, and the only people that we knew were Diane, who at that point, even though I lived 15 minutes away from her, I had never actually met her in person at that point. And I'd been interacting with her on social media for probably at least a year at that point. And then Peter, who we won the tickets from. And then I'd seen Mike on his episode, so I knew what he looked like.
Uh-huh.
So we got up there where, we had fun. We were still kind of wallflowers. And as we were leaving, like to head home, I ran into Mike in the hallway and I just, stopped him and thanked him. And, Mike's a big guy. Mike's 6'4", 300 pounds.
Well, he's the one that greets you on the website when you log in to get tickets. It pops up and says,
"Yep, that's Mike." And he's a hugger. And, I mean, I'm a hugger too, but he's
that's a serious
not always
hug.
aware of his size.
Well, funny Mike story. So now I don't know him at all, right? And and I was on Creative South's website. It was right before tickets went on sale, and that little thing popped up in the corner, and it's an automated thing that pops up, and it's a way of contacting them, and so it pops up, and it's got a little thumbnail of Mike's image, right? And he's got a beard and a hat on, kind of a rugged looking dude. And so this thing pops up and it says, hey, can I help you or whatever? And, I was just being a smart ass like I tend to be. And so I replied to it. I was like, no, you're scary looking. I don't want to talk to you or something like that. Well, moments later, I get a thing from him saying, oh, hey, no, I'm not scary. I promise.
No, he's a big teddy bear.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I got talking to him about Creative South tickets. But yes, even from afar and via thumbnail, I was frightened of Mike. So
yeah. Well, thankfully he smiles all the time, so it takes away the scary a lot.
Oh, good.
Well, and there's another Mike Jones out there that's a rapper that has big grills on his teeth.
Yeah.
So we should Photoshop something in.
I think if you go on the web and search for that, you can actually find someone who has done that.
Oh, too late.
Yeah, he gets that one a lot. Yeah. Not necessarily the grills on the teeth, but the jokes about
Mike Jones.
Yeah. Who? So the first year we went, we were kind of like that. I saw him, we saw Mike as we were running out. He gives a big bear hug, and which just like, I'm not a big guy. I'm 5'9", on a good day when I've been laying down for a long time. And his hug just like engulfs you. So we were already sold on it at that point. We knew we were coming back. The next year we came back, we were a lot more gregarious, a lot more outgoing, made a point to
actually meet people and
find all the people that we had. I mean, it's not that we didn't meet people the first year that we were up there, but we met them, we connected with them online, so we were chatting via Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and keeping in touch over that entire year. So the next year we went, and it was just even more so, and met even more people and connected even deeper because we actually took the time to like go out and, go outside of our comfort zone and talk with people and, invite strangers to lunch or invite ourselves to lunch with other people, which is completely acceptable there. Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's going through, and then we get back, and I've got a buddy who lives down here who has been big into podcasts for a while and has just always kind of been listening and decided to start his own podcast network. And he kept trying to push me into doing something. I was like, I don't have anything to say. What would I say? And I got about halfway through the year and realized, hey, I'm already talking to all these designers that, are pretty decent level designers every day anyways, whether it's through DMs or just publicly on Twitter or Facebook or even a Slack channel that we have. And I was like, well, I don't have to make it about me. I can just interview these people and have a conversation with them and get to know them and put that out there. So I reached out to Mike, and Mike and I had become friends at this point. So it wasn't like just this.
You're not just randomly out of blue. Hey, you give me a hug. Let's do a radio.
No. We'd become friends at this point. And I was like, what would you think about having a podcast? And he gets back to me within like 5 minutes. And he's like, funny you should say that. We were just having to talk about that. Is it something you would want to do? I was like, yeah, that's the reason I was reaching out to you. not thinking that this would happen within a matter of about 2 weeks. Like I reached out to him pretty much either right before or right after Thanksgiving. And within the next few days, he was like, well, what do you need? What type of and like I hadn't even researched any of that stuff yet. My idea of a podcast was, hey, we should do a podcast. That was all I knew about it. It was like, really fine, I can get it on iTunes. Yeah. So within 2 weeks, like I've figured out how to do the hosting, how to get everything up online, figured out the RSS feeds, all that nerdy technical stuff, figuring out what's the best microphone that's in a reasonable price range that I can afford.
What'd you end up using?
I use a Blue Yeti.
Okay.
And
that is a popular one among the creative community. Many,
it really is, and it's a really
like
solid
a lot of guys
mic.
are using that.
I'm probably going to
upgrade. USB, right?
Yeah, it's a USB mic.
Okay.
I'm probably going to upgrade here to Heil Pro PR40 in the next couple of months or so. I'm just counting my money and figuring out. I mean, I've got sponsorship money and stuff like that I could use to it, but I also want to get T-shirts and things like that for that. So I'm trying to figure out the balance of it. Of do I want to wait or do I want to do this? So, I will eventually upgrade, but I'm not exactly sure when yet. So it was up and running, and I was recording. Like I had all my equipment in about 2 weeks, then Christmas hit, between Christmas and New Year's, I had recorded 2 episodes. I had recorded one with Lenny Terenzi, who's also on staff with Creative South and runs Hey Monkey Design out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And then I'd recorded one with Mike.
Nice.
And then right after New Year's, I started making a point, and I started recording a ton. And I didn't put any out. I purposely didn't put any out until the beginning of March.
Was that just so you had a back catalog and you had some buffer to go on?
Yeah, I gave myself a 2-month window because I knew that I had to figure out how do I edit properly. I had a basic understanding of how to edit because I've edited some video stuff for work and things like that, but I'd never really directly edited audio. And I knew that there was going to be audio correction and stuff like that I needed to figure out. And it was going to take me a while. And I knew that those first few episodes were going to take me a while to figure out really get that editing process down.
So I wanted from first few. Sorry to cut you off. That's what I do, as we talked about. So from the first few episodes to more than 100. So congrats on that. Yeah. And because that's a pretty significant milestone. I'm not sure most podcasts make it that far. They
probably not.
Most of them that start out as that, hey, we should have a podcast.
5 in, they're like, this is a lot of work.
Usually get to 2 or 3, and that's about it. So, but what's changed for you between now and then? How's the show evolved? Have you learned anything? Any pointers?
Oh, let's see. The show has probably not evolved as much as it should have. And I mean that as far as the format goes. The format's pretty
if you get
similar.
Something good, there's no reason to change it.
Yeah, the format's pretty similar to when I've started. It's I've experimented with going outside of it, and this is my comfort zone. This is my wheelhouse, and this is what seems to be connecting. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, like you said.
Yep.
But I think my interview skills have improved. I've gotten better at listening, and not Not in the way where I'm like listening and waiting to say something that I thought of, where I'm actually actively listening to the conversation and responding appropriately and not trying to, because when I first started, I thought, and this is going to sound egotistic, but I think I'm a pretty funny guy most of the time. Or at least I can be funny. And I thought, well, it'll be fun. I'll have funny interjections and things like that. But I realized by me trying to do that, I wasn't listening.
You're just derailing the conversation more than anything.
Yeah. So I went back and I stopped trying to be funnier.
Yeah, and Mike was looking at me when he said that. I think he's trying to say something.
Way to go, Ryan.
I mean, not that I don't like every once in a while, try to be funny in something, but it's
sure. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right?
I still try to be me.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be entertaining, but I mean, at the same time, it's you, and that's part of the fun, right? I mean, you're talking about format and things like that, but I mean, part of your format is just the way you do the show. That is your format. It doesn't need to be super regimented or whatever. I mean, it just is what it is. And I think that, it's fun. People like it. I mean, like for me, I liked how casual it was and how easy it was to, just bust it out. And maybe that's one of those things that seems to be happening with the internet, is that it's not important that everything is highly polished, highly produced all the time. It can be on the fly, recorded in a corner in a bar. And as long as the content's okay, it's fine. It really doesn't need to be mega high def, fully done in a studio or whatever. I mean, it's maybe the internet has done that for us, but.
Well, that's why I always laugh when it comes to podcasting, when you see these people out there and they're selling these $1,000 classes to go out and learn the best in audio engineering technique and da-da-da-da. So I'm like, it's a podcast. It's getting broadcast off the internet, then through somebody's phone where it's been compressed down again. And, it's 192 kilobytes at best. Yeah. This isn't this isn't lossless quality. This isn't high def sound. This is through a phone, through somebody's earbuds. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not saying go out and make it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, in some cases, the only option you have to record someone is through a phone or through an iPhone little tiny mic. And some of those, even if you EQ it right and kind of get it dialed in, it still sounds pretty good.
Yeah, you can get decent. I mean, honestly, you can get decent sound from just about anything nowadays.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect. And some of my favorite podcasts that I've listened to have been, like you said, have been recorded in a bar. And it's two guys sitting around talking over beers. And and you can hear the background noise, and you can hear the glasses clinking, and you can hear all of that stuff.
Yeah, no, we did a show back in...
And it doesn't take away from the sound.
Yeah, it's great. In fact, I think a lot of times it adds to it. We did a show back in November with this guy, Desi Valentine, that's a musician, and we were invited backstage to do our interview with him. Well, while we were backstage, the other band that he was playing with was on stage sound checking. Oh, and so you could hear the music from the other band playing like bleed through on our mics.
Sure.
And but like when I go back and listen to that show, like it just feels so raw and so like full of character, And I mean, I'm super proud of that one. And part of it was those guys messing up our sound. Yeah. And so so really, like you're saying, that ambience can add to it a lot of times.
Yeah. What about you guys? How did you get started in the podcasting stuff? I mean, I know you kind of said that you got started after I'd had you on my show, but.
We had been talking about doing it for a while, and
we were we want a podcast guys,
and we were just always talking about it and never doing it. And I have a background in audio and music and stuff like that, so it was kind of a shoe-in to go ahead and just do it. It was just a matter of committing and actually doing it the first time.
Well, and what's great about like our setup is that we're sort of two halves of a whole, right? So Mike has the audio engineering expertise and that sort of background, and I'm more on the visual marketing side. And so between the two of us, Mike can record and engineer the sound while I produce the album artwork and publish on social media and do the writing and things like that. And so we actually make a pretty nice little combination. And by being able to sort of divide our workload a little bit that way, it's not too much burden for either one of us. Now, I will say there have been a couple instances where it's been more burden on Mike because of technical problems or things like that. But in general, I feel like we were able to sort of divide and conquer pretty well.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh no, I was trying to just feed in when I didn't need to.
No, go ahead.
He was trying to be funny, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, but to get a little bit more into our background, so as you met me at a creative conference, I come from an advertising and marketing background. I run a little marketing agency called R2 Media Group, and actually, you can go back and listen to that first show, the first my first podcast ever with Jason. Was somewhere I fell between episodes 37 and 38
called 37 and a half
37 and a half of the Creative South podcast. So if you go back and check that out, it's live from WMC Fest right after episode 37. But you can go back and get sort of the long version of my story. But basically I was sort of born into art and design. I've always been an artist in one variety or another. And so for me, even though I do some drawing and painting and things like that, fine art wasn't probably really ever a good fit for me.
Sure.
I'm trying now later in life to go back and learn a few more skills in those areas. But as a younger person, that was pretty low priority for me. And commercial art seemed like a better fit.
Seemed
to
it
me.
is a good word.
Yeah, it seemed like a better fit to me. And so, and it's funny because as I was listening to, a number of different guests on your program, on the Creative South podcast, it seems like us and you included all sort of get into it the same way. It's like we're all artsy, but we need to make money with it. And and so that sort of was my direction.
Artsy
as
yet
well.
practical is like how I like to refer to it.
Yeah, so I went to university and everything, and took a marketing and advertising program. They didn't actually have a design program at the university I was at. There was some design courses as a part of the advertising program, but I went from there to working for a guy named Don Aslett, who's a well-known publisher of books, and he's had several New York Times bestsellers and things like that. And I went to work for him. They initially had hired me as a receptionist, and which is weird.
The glamorous design life that a receptionist is.
And so, but on my first day, the person who I worked with, there was just two of us in his little shop, asked me, if I knew anything about Photoshop. She was trying to make a little graphic for one of Don's books.
And
I was like, huh. Well, at that point I had some experience with it. And I mean, I've certainly come a long way since then, but I had some understanding. So I sat down and I was able to create what she needed. And that was sort of
aha moment.
Yeah, the aha moment or the wrecking ball of truth that led to more and more creative work and less receptionist work. And so I had a really great opportunity to lay out some books and build websites, and I ran the mail order business and the catalog and everything for him. So I really got to dabble in about 100 different disciplines on his dime.
Oh, wow.
And I'm super grateful for that experience. In fact, anytime I get a chance to see the guy, I still try and track him down. He's in his 80s now, so he's a little easier to catch, but
doesn't run as fast.
Yeah. So anyway, but at some point, I was working for him, and through one circumstance and another, there was a layoff. And at that moment, there were three of us in the company, and two of us got cut, and one stayed behind. And so I got cut, but lucky for me, I had been freelancing a little bit at night. And sort of just fell into that. I had enough of a clientele that I was able to sort of sustain that, and just went to work on my own. And even though I'd been laid off there, he gave me some office space that he didn't charge me for, and allowed me to stay in his building so that I could continue to work as a freelancer. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then whenever he had a project, he'd kick it my way.
Well, wasn't he one of your best clients after that?
Yeah, for years. He was one of my top clients. Him and a couple of his partners were some of my top clients. And basically that was sort of a big part of the evolution of my company. Mike and I had sort of some common interests in that we were both big music fans. And I was touring with a lot of bands and things like that, and doing concert posters for everybody. And anybody who's worked with bands know that they notoriously have no money, which makes them not great clients.
Yeah, my first client was my roommate's band, so I'm well aware.
So you can relate. Nice. And for me, what eventually happened, and this is what sort of nudged me into freelance, was just I was doing so many posters for so many bands and not charging anybody that I finally had to start charging. That was the only way to sort of beat them back, was to ask, charge money for it, and then that sort of weeded
and by
out.
Charging money, he's like,
it was like $25 or something. But it was enough. It was enough to shake most of the river.
Beer money.
Yeah,
pretty much.
So time goes on, and I'm on the road with this band called the Cottonmouth Kings, and they're playing my hometown of Pocatello, Idaho, and Mike. Just by happenstance, was brought in by the club to provide additional lighting and sound for the show. And, it was love at first sight. And so we basically palled up then and have been in one degree or another of trouble ever since.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Essentially, I just wouldn't leave him alone. That's what it comes down to.
Gotcha.
So,
Mike, what's your background?
I've been a DJ since I was 14. When I was 14, we had these church dances that we'd go to, and went in there one time, and DJ was this old man playing, old time rock and roll for 14-year-old kids that didn't like it. And so I went in and asked to see if I could do it, and they had a whopping budget of $150 a night to DJ these dances.
Hey,
and
I
as
would still take that money.
You know what? As a 14-year-old kid, it sure was awesome.
Yeah.
And so I talked to my dad, took out a loan and bought some speakers and a couple CD players, and started doing these church dances. And by the time I was 16, I was doing weddings and all sorts of fun stuff. Actually, the first wedding I ever DJ'd, I couldn't even drive. My dad dropped me off and picked me up, and it was it was embarrassing, but is what it is. And then down the road, I kind of got into doing more lighting and kind of higher end clients. I moved down to Phoenix after I met Ryan and did that show. I kind of ended up in Phoenix and was working for this company called Rock the World Entertainment, and we did these like high dollar proms. So we'd go into a high school and it'd be, a gymnasium, and by the time we're done with it, it'd be a full-on nightclub.
Oh, jeez.
And we'd hang lights from the rafters, and, they'd give us like a $15,000 budget to come in and do their prom. And, it was pretty cool. Did that for a few years. Because I had access to all that equipment, I started promoting shows at a few venues down there with bands, and since we had the lighting and stuff like that, pretty soon our shows were the premiere, the one to get into. So all the bands wanted to be on our bill once a month just because it made them look like rock stars. And did that for a while, and ended up moving to Seattle. Went to school for recording arts. I kind of just working with the bands, it intrigued me. I had a few bands that went through the recording process down in Phoenix, and I kind of sat through it with them, and it was just really interesting. So when I found out that one of the colleges in Seattle had a really good program, I went through it, and now that's what I do.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So Ryan, I realize I cut you off kind of mid your story, but
that's
getting
okay.
back to that,
I was droning on.
So getting back to that, you go out on your own freelancing, and I'm not sure how to phrase this. So your company, it has office in Salt Lake City.
Yep. So
and
we're located
one in Barcelona.
That's right.
How does that happen?
Well, and again, I'll refer people back to our episode of the Creative South podcast because I gave you this long form. But basically, we have our boys have been in Spanish immersion elementary school since they were little kids. Our oldest is a fifth grader now, but they've both been in it since kindergarten.
Gotcha.
And a few years back, we hosted a girl from Barcelona who came out here as a teacher. Mm-hmm. And needed a host family. And so we offered up our home, and she stayed with us. And her name's Anna, and she's still my partner over there. And basically what happened is she had begun life as a designer, but because of the economic situation in Spain, she switched gears and went into education. Teaching job over there is basically government work. You get a pension. It's everything else. It's a really good job. And so it made sense for her to switch into teaching. Because the future path in Spain with horrible unemployment and everything else is really poor for a designer. It's a lot more difficult slog. So she switched gears and decided to do that. Well, while she was living with us, at the time I was working for an agency, and then I was running my business at night. And so she, living in our house, had sort of a front row view of the crap I was working on every night when I left the agency. And so for about 6 months prior to her returning to Spain, she worked with me just about every night on different little projects, designing everything from business cards to websites, whatever. And it really sort of rekindled her interest in design. And at the time she decided to go, well, not decided to go home. At the time her program was finished and she was going back to Spain, we offered her a full-time job.
Oh, awesome.
And so she basically took our company over to Barcelona with her. At this point, we have her and just one other designer over there, and then we're sort of HQ, or sort of headquartered here in Salt Lake City. And so so anyway, so what's really cool about it is it gives us more or less an 18 to 20 hour workday because of the time difference. And so it gives us a lot of bandwidth, a lot of flexibility, and some sort of kind of a unique niche that our clients just love.
So you're able to kind of just have the work ready to go. They get it 90% of the way done overnight. You wake up and just do it.
Yeah, more or less. Because basically, let's say a project comes into me at 10 in the morning. We work on it during the day. At 6 o'clock, we hand it off to the folks over in Spain. At our midnight, they're up and working again. And, and by the time we get back into work in the morning, it's more or less ready to go. And so we can do sort of rapid turn projects that, domestically based agencies have a lot of time, a hard time keeping up with, just because, you can't slave drive your people overnight. But because we have an 8-hour time difference from Utah to Barcelona, basically we can be, we can cram 2 shifts into one day. So it's kind of a little competitive advantage we've got.
Gotcha. Well, I know another thing that you did this past year is you spent a lot of time in Boston for some clients. How does, when you've got to go on the road and spend so much time, how does that work? Because like you said, you've got a wife and kids, and they're going to school and all that.
That was definitely kind of a hairy situation. I went out there. I think it's okay to say I was out there working for a company called Aetna, which is a big
insurance company,
health insurance company, and I was out there working with them through one of our clients. So our agency has a client that's a much larger agency than ours, and they are the agency of record, or one of the agencies of records for Aetna Medicare. And so they brought me in this year to help out with that. And basically, I was out in Boston for 2.5 months, working on the Medicare launch, and just having sort of FaceTime with the top brass there at Aetna. And it was a really cool opportunity. And as you sort of mentioned, I mean, it's complicated with a wife and kids. And the agency I work for, we had to, broker kind of a sweetheart deal to make it work with my wife. And the agency was very accommodating to my family. They provided us with some childcare, like a nanny, to drive the kids to and from school and things like that. And they really did all they could to accommodate the family.
They also flew you back and forth quite a bit.
Yeah, too. I also got to, I could go back and forth each weekend. There were a few weekends I stayed out there just to do some exploring, but they really did kind of go above and beyond to make it as easy as they could. Now, my wife teaches in a high school or a junior high, and so she's got a very busy schedule also. So it was difficult, but because of the help they helped arrange and some other things like that, we also had a mother-in-law come down and stay for part of the time, and that was really helpful for my wife. So
gotcha.
But I've got to say, I mean, I'm lucky to have sort of an understanding wife who sort of puts up with my crap.
She actually bends over a lot for.
Mike's been around long enough.
That.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yes.
Hey, this is a family show.
Let's keep this PG.
What are you doing?
She's been amazing. I'm there all the time, and just the fact that she puts up with me being there all the time and me stealing him at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night to do a podcast. I mean, she's great when it comes to that.
Yeah, she's really good.
So.
And Mike's been around long enough to witness most of this crap. But I mean, when she and I got married, I didn't even have a real job. I started with that Aslet character a couple months after we got married. and I was touring around with a bunch of bands at the time, and so I mean, I was sort of a Rolling Stone, from the beginning.
Sure.
I really like to see the country and the world, and and I've sort of been able to craft a business and a career that allows me the opportunity to do that. However, it wouldn't be possible if I had a wife who wasn't so flexible, so understanding, and so willing to sort of work with me on that. So it's, I mean, it's been, a fun ride, and, and we try and make sure that the family gets out, and, I brought the family out to Boston for 10 days, and, we try and do as much as we can together. We took them out to Spain for a month.
You took them out there
year.
for that conference.
And so, I mean, we try and do as much as we can together, but, obviously it's not possible to pull the kids out of school all the time or whatever. So having an accommodating family who's willing to sort of put up with my Rolling Stone-ness is, I think key to making that happen.
Sure. I'm very lucky with that. My wife is a designer as well, so
yeah, that's right. You guys actually kind of have have a business together, right?
Yeah. It's called Frostholm, which there's a long story behind that, but
so Frost, obviously your last name.
Yes, and then
Tiki is you just like the good weather,
Polynesian, like as in the Polynesian.
Yeah, torch, the Tiki man.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. So my wife's a big fan of mid-century modern stuff, and especially the Polynesian culture stuff that you can't even call it Polynesian. The faux Polynesian culture that sprung up around the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And she brought me into that kicking and screaming at first, and now I've fully embraced it. But we started off Frostholm shortly after we got married as a way to sell just mid-century modern sort of tiki design, art prints, and greeting cards, and I did some pyrography. I cannot say that. Wood burnings.
Just gonna,
some stuff like that. And there's a big tiki festival that goes on every year in Fort Lauderdale at this place called the Mai Kai. I think it's 60 years old now, and it's just this gorgeous, gorgeous retro throwback. Well, you can't even call it a throwback because it's all original of the 50s and 60s of tiki culture, and they have Polynesian dancers and rum drinks that will kick your ass.
Nice.
And, that all have like secret recipes and stuff like that.
So you've got a new website for this project. It's just frostiki.com, and it's spelled like it sounds. It's FROSTIKI.com.
Yep.
Right now we've got a landing page up, but I did see the occasional Mai Tai written there, and I am a big Mai Tai fan.
Oh.
So hopefully we'll have to make the run out to Fort Lauderdale this year for the Mai Tais out there.
Yeah, we're really hoping to make it down there this year. So
what is the, and maybe this leads right into, sort of what we do a little bit with our show is we use the metaphor of an egg to talk about a person's process from start to finish, from coop to table. And so maybe with Frostholm and, being your egg, can you talk about any of the challenges you've had sort of getting that up and running? Right now we've got a coming soon, so I guess there's a site coming.
Yeah, but, well, that's me being my own worst client. There is a site client. So like I was saying, it started off where we were just selling tiki stuff. And then we had kids, things came along, and we weren't able to get out to the festival as much as we wanted to and things like that. So it just kind of sat dormant for a while, and we owned the name, we owned the trademark, and we weren't doing anything with it. And I hadn't, because I've been in-house for so long, I hadn't really been freelancing until about close to a year ago, a little less than a year ago. And I had something fall in my lap for freelancing and kind of reignited the fire for that. And my wife has, since the kids came along, has been a full-time freelancer. So she can work from home and take care of the kids and all that, as well as, burn the midnight oil and do design stuff. So I had this project that just fell into my lap, and it was bigger than I could do by myself. So my wife and I started working on it together. And that was, aside from us working together at the printing company, which is a much different situation, we hadn't really worked together on stuff before. So even with the first round of Frosty Q, it was her doing like stationary design and things like that, which is her passion, and me just doing kind of crafty wood burning sort of stuff that was just fun for me.
Just an outlet.
Yeah, it was just an outlet. It was a fun little hobby. It's an expensive hobby. That equipment gets pricey. But you know, we were just, when it started off, we were just doing our own thing with it. And then, you know, like I said, it took that extended hiatus because kids came along and real life and all that stuff. And then when this freelance stuff came up and it was too big for me to work on myself and we're working together, we started talking about it of, do we want to make a go of this? Do we want to, you know, try to build this up so it's actually something? And we've been doing that ever since. So for about the past year, we've been taking on new clients, and it's not like moving at a rocket pace, but it's not moving at a snail's pace either. It's steadily growing, and you know, we've got a couple really decent clients and a couple clients that, while they don't pay big bucks or anything, they're consistently, you know, 3-4 projects a month sending us stuff that, you know, is a few hundred to like $1,000 here and there.
Yeah, well, so it's just clients like that are like, you know, the bread and butter of a good freelance business.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's great.
So we're just trying to grow that and make a go of it and build it up. And
okay. So
see where that leads us.
Tina, so Tina, your wife, is a designer, and so are you. Do your skill sets complement one another, or like one of you an Illustrator pro, one's a Photoshop expert? Like, I mean, are there some complementary things, or can you both just sort of drive on the same projects, or do you have some sort of?
We can both drive on the same project. I think I'm more of a technical illustration. I can do more technical illustration stuff than she does.
It's all those engineers you're hanging around.
Literally, it is. I mean, seriously, because I've had to do so many things where I take stuff in and make it. I mean, it's not rendered, but make it look presentable and
sure.
You know, flat vector shapes that look cool, versus just a CAD drawing. So, I think that's more my skill set. I'm more of a branding logo guy. She's much more on the layout side of things, and overall concepts, and she's obviously has a more feminine touch than I do. Well, I shouldn't say obvious. That's just sexist. But I mean, she's got a more feminine touch. She's better at softer things than I am, and my drawing style is much more angular and things like that.
Do you ever run into an issue where you can't decide on something and have to flip a coin or something to get the
no,
don't want to be sleeping on the couch?
no, it's usually just our biggest thing is, well, who's going to have time to work on this one because we just took this on, and that's where our growing pains are struggling. But I mean, when it comes to creative stuff and things like that, we haven't really butted heads or anything like that. Like, I value her opinion. I'm pretty sure she values mine most days. And we work really well together, better than I think we thought we would, which is why we had put it off for so long.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's good news.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, so I want to circle back just and touch on a couple last things before we wrap this baby up.
Sure.
But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I think this was actually a question that you had sent over to pose to us, but I'm curious about your take on it too. So maybe we can both hit it. Is
okay.
Where do you want to take your podcast in the future? Like, what's the future plans for the Creative South podcast?
So, future plans. Obviously, I want to grow it every year. Like, I'm well aware that it's a business for me, and it is an additional source of income. I get a little bit of sponsorship money. I'd like to obviously get more sponsors. And as far as that, I'd like to branch out into doing a few other things. I want to go and get like all of my episodes transcribed and kind of go through, and I'm going to have to hire somebody to do this, but go through and have somebody trying to figure out. I'm literally fleshing this out of my head as we're talking. Go through and take all of the relevant passages from each one where there's themes that coincide with each other and things like that, and maybe form that into a book or something.
Oh, cool. That's a fun idea.
Yeah, because, well, I talk about business a little bit in the podcast, but I don't do it enough. I'd like to start doing a little bit more of that as well. So I think I'm going to start, and this is time dependent, so please no one hold me to this. I'd like to start doing some short, like 15-minute episodes where I talk about the business and just change up the format just a little bit just short 15-minute episodes, like once every couple of weeks.
Well, I've got a name for you on transcription, so we'll talk after the show on that, but I can help you with that one.
Good, because all the ones I found are pricey.
Well, it's funny because we started out, that was one of the first things we were doing.
Episodes we did.
I think we did maybe the first 8 episodes.
Oh, really?
I have transcribed. And our problem was that I wasn't using it, and that was an expense. I mean, we're still young enough in the show that we haven't quite figured out how to monetize yet, and we're trying to work on that. We've got some.
No, I'm still trying to figure it out too, so I don't feel bad.
And so we had to sort of mitigate the money we were just putting in that wasn't actually returning anything. So we slowed down on the transcription. But I love that idea of sort of compiling the best ofs, and putting that into some kind of book or I don't know, a calendar with quotes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something. But, I mean, even if it's just blog posts that I can put up and be centered around different themes, I would be fine with that too. It's just, I think a book in the long term is my ultimate goal with something like that, and take themes. Because one of the things, and I went off onto the tangent of business, but one of the things that I really focus on a lot, and it's not intentional, is, a lot of creatives deal with depression and anxiety and things like that. So tackling that from a creative person's standpoint, I think is something that could be really helpful.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and having experienced all that stuff as a creative person, I can tell you it's true, and it's also true of just about everyone I know in the field. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few exceptionally, healthy people out there, but by and large, it's a pretty common trait among creatives.
Yeah, there's very few.
Well, you're hypercritical of your own work, and and that's how you're making money, is putting your work out there.
Well, and anytime you're kind of working as an artist and you're working, you don't have that steady money coming in, and you're a freelancer, and there's a lot of insecurity, and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know any artists. I mean, I really can't think of any that are like super proud of their work. It's always, it could be better. Oh, it could be whatever, and I think that characteristic is indicative of the larger sort of insecurity, anxiety, whatever that's sort of built into creative people.
Well, and I also think the better you get, the more critical you are of your work.
Definitely.
Me, for example, when I put a mix out 6 years ago, when I first started recording mixes, who cares? I'm just giving it to my friends. No big deal. Now I kind of have a base, and everything I put out, I'm super sensitive about it, and I go back and even this week I recorded an hour mix, and as I was recording it, I was thinking, oh, this is awesome. And then I went and sat down and listened to it, and I deleted it. It just, it is what it is.
Well, it's the same. And, it's funny because we've had people ask us, because we seem to be coming from different places, Mike and I, where he's got sort of this digital background as a DJ, and I come from sort of this art and design side. And but it's funny because there's really, if you sort of break it down, creativity is the same across channels, and across mediums, really. And so Mike and I actually, are very very similar in a lot of ways.
Parallels.
And we're, and even myself, I'm kind of guilty of it. I didn't realize some of these parallels until we started doing the show. And then it's like, oh, well, you're, as a DJ, you're going through the same struggle I am. I'm trying to
clients.
I'm trying to format an ad or locate, find new business or whatever it is. And the struggle is the same for really anybody in any creative field, whether it's music or design or whatever it is. And so that's been kind of an interesting insight that we've come across doing this show, is just sort of how similar we all are, even though, at first glance, we might be a little different.
Definitely. So going back to that, what is something that you guys hope to do with your podcast?
Well, I think, and maybe Mike has different motives, so I won't speak for him, but I think ultimately, the goal is to make it bigger. I think it's doing what we set out to do, which was initially anyway, was to generate content. We'll be 34 episodes deep with this one. And so that's, I mean, for us, it's quite the accomplishment. That's 34 weeks of shows.
It's just the fact that we're still doing it.
And so that, for us, that's, I mean, we can't impress you 100 episode guys, but our 34 episodes.
34 episodes is pretty tough to get to.
Well, it's a big win for me and Mike too, because like I mentioned earlier in the show, I mean, the two of us are schemers, and we're always up to stuff. There's always some show or some project or some event or whatever it is we want to host. And, but usually it's flash in the pan, it's done and gone, so the fact that this is stuck for so long, is something that I think collectively we're really proud of and, really grateful for. So I think the goal is to keep moving forward. It's evolved from just strictly us forcing content out into the world into something a little different. When we transitioned to sort of an interview show, where we were bringing on guests rather than trying to lead the whole thing ourselves, it changed the whole dynamic to something where we're sharing information, we're a conduit for information, and it's turned into an awesome networking opportunity, a way to make new friends and meet new people from all kinds of new backgrounds. And I mean, I think in general, it's really rewarding. So I would say, at least from my perspective, just continued growth, continue getting great guests and meeting great people, attending events and doing other things on behalf of the podcast, I think are all sort of goals. I don't know if Mike's got anything different.
I think that's pretty much sums it up for me as well. I've really enjoyed the process so far. I think it would be cool at some point to get some bands in studio, do some live recordings and stuff like that. That's kind of my expertise. So I think that'd be fun to do. I don't know. I pretty much keep doing what we're doing and hopefully it takes us somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, I guess we've got to be around an hour and some change.
We are sitting just over an hour. Yep.
And awesome. And so I don't know, in closing, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Or actually, can I ask you a couple questions about the Creative South event?
Absolutely.
I mean, not to circle all the way back to the beginning, but, me and Mike here, right? We've been talking about it for weeks on the show about getting, our plans together and starting and getting our tickets bought and everything. For the person who's on the edge like us, quote unquote, on the edge, what would you say about this conference?
Procrastination is not the edge.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, so I will say, one insight that came to me after attending that Weapons of Mass Creation Fest where I met you, not to beat that into the ground for eggs listeners, but it was just the importance of these types of events. And everybody at that event, or many of the people I met at that event, are regulars at Creative South. And it was their sort of, 2 cents on the matter that have sort of encouraged me to want to go.
Well, actually, I just the tagline for the show, "Come as friends, leave as family." That says a lot right there. I mean, as far as...
and it's funny because in Cleveland, we got a little bit of that. I mean, here we are 2 years later. We're still, we've had a number of guys from that event on our show. Here we are doing this one with Jason, those were seeds laid 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, Creative South, sort of the experience in general? I mean, you mentioned some positive experiences you'd had with it, but also just the importance of this kind of event in terms of personal and professional growth and improvement, and just, I don't know. I mean, if there's any like parting shots or selling points or anything you could deliver on that show, on that event.
Sure. Right after I cough. So this year, Creative South is April 12th through 14th, I think.
That sounds right.
That sounds right. I really should know that. But like I said, for me, it's just been a really good way to get out there and meet other people in the industry.
Yep,
I know
12th through 14th.
Yes. So with a lot of freelancers and a lot of people, even people who work in-house, a lot of times we're kind of isolated and we're kind of by ourselves. And this is a good conference and a good way to get out and, share your stories and meet other people who are like-minded, who do the same thing, who have the same interests and things like that. So it's not so much networking as it is, making friends and making family.
Well, and it's interesting. So I'm sort of as you described yourself, like, at your first Creative South event, sort of not generally the first to be, real out there. Generally, I'll
What
kind
are
of
you
stick to
talking about?
myself.
You hit people up on Instagram to find.
Well,
things
that's
to do.
the new me. So, but my impulse, even though I fight through it a lot of times, my impulse is to sort of be quiet and be that wallflower. And when I came to Cleveland, I was just a babe lost in the woods. And the only thing that could occur to me is to hit some people up on Instagram that were all perfect strangers to me, but I was pulled into a group of guys and we hung out all week, and guys and gals, and we hung out all week, and it was a really amazing experience. We made some really good opportunities and or not opportunities, but relationships, and that sort of camaraderie, especially for people who work as freelancers. You spend a lot of time alone. You talked earlier to the burning midnight oil and stuff like that. I mean, that's the reality for a freelancer, and probably contributes to the depression we were talking about too.
I'm sure it does.
But you spend an awful lot of time by yourself in your own thoughts, thinking about what to do or whatever. And that event, and I can't speak to Creative South outside of just what everybody's told me, but because I don't go to a lot of these things, and I should do more. Because I've always been an advocate in investing in yourself and continually learning and things like that. And so I believe in all those things. But as I said, I'm a little bit quiet and reserved most of the time, so I don't put myself out there a lot. But the positive things that I pulled out of Weapons of Mass Creation Fest have affected me in a lot of really positive ways. And everything I've heard about Creative South indicates that it's all that and more.
I would agree with that. I think, Weapons is my second favorite conference that I've been to. And, I obviously I'm biased. And Creative South was the first creative conference that I went to. But they have a very similar feel, I think. And Creative South isn't like huge. It's, I don't know, about 800 people throughout the weekend.
That ain't bad.
Yeah, no, but that's about 2 to 3 times the size of Weapons of Mass Creation.
Yeah, and really though, that's kind of about right.
It doesn't feel like that.
Well, that's the thing. You can go to Adobe Max and hang out with 5,000 people, but how do you can't get to know anybody? You don't have time.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, there's no time for the relationship building that like I got out of the Weapons show. And so, but that's one of the things I was really excited about Creative South is actually coming out and doing that. And I mean, I know a number of guys from Weapons of Mass Creation Fest are coming out there. So it'll be great to reunite with those guys and spend some time with them, but also just the opportunity to come out and meet new people and more people. Yeah, is all really exciting for me. Also, the speaker lineup is crazy.
This is by far one of my favorite years for speakers. I mean,
yeah, there are a couple that I'm really excited about.
Now I'm going to blank on all of them because I don't have it pulled up in front of me.
Well, but, a couple that I just love. I mean, John Contino, Amy and Jen Hood are awesome. Liz Mack is great. I mean, there's a bunch of these people that I have, just sort of peripheral awareness of, but I'm really excited to try and see them. And, and that was, I think, one of the things that was the biggest takeaway for me with this kind of event. Cause, I guess maybe with Weapons, it's not the most expensive conference in the world. And so it's really open to a lot of students and a lot of people who maybe can't drop, $200 or $300 on themselves to come to something like this.
Sure.
But I think it's really important for people to understand even if it feels like a lot of money, it's still important to take that and invest it in you. Mm-hmm. And the experiences you'll get and the things you'll pull out of it, far exceed the cost of attendance.
Oh yeah, and Creative South is, I mean, it's by no means is an expensive conference, but it is about $300 for a ticket, and then workshops are additional on top of that. But the content that you get from it and the experience that you get from it is well worth the money. And if you're a student, we have student tickets available. They're not live yet, but they will be going live. Oh, I don't know when. Sometime soon.
Sometime between then and now.
Yeah, sometime between now and April.
So keep an eye on the creativesouth.com website.
But there's also opportunities where if you can't afford it, we have tickets for volunteers where they get a ticket for, I think it's half price. And I'm going to say that and it's probably going to be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's half price.
But that's really cool, and I think it's also very self-aware, understanding the audience. You're going to have a share of people that come out to this kind of thing that maybe work in agency or their company is going to pay for it or whatever. But a lot of these people are freelancers or students or whomever, and a lot of them don't have big money. So just being aware of that is I think really cool, and also just sort of speaks to maybe the personality of this conference, of the Creative South Conference, in that, they're really looking out for people, and they're actually, coming from a good place. It's not about just like a money grab,
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Although anybody who's ever put on conferences or things like this, no, it's rarely a money grab.
Oh, yeah.
No, yeah.
Not at all.
You're almost always working in a deficit.
So the money that we make every year basically just gets pumped right back into the conference, and it's not enough to pay for the conference for the next year by any means.
Yeah.
So it's just constantly revolving into making the conference bigger and better.
Having been in the promotion game, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge for sure. So anyway, well, we're sure looking forward to it, and hopefully in the next couple of days we'll get off our ass and make a decision.
Please do. I really hope to see that.
But it's our plan to come out, and like I said, we'd like to try and maybe bring the show on the road. In addition to just like I'm really looking forward to some of the breakout sessions, and other things like that. I mean, I've been in the advertising and marketing business for a long time, but as I mentioned, you can never stop learning. You can never stop. What's the next trend? What's the next thing? And some of the people coming to speak at this event are the ones coming up with the trends. I mean, there's some really, really great minds coming to this thing. Yeah. And so for more information on that, hit up just creativesouth.com.
Yep.
All right, Jason, anything else?
No, you want to wrap it up?
I mean, unless you've got something else. I mean, I feel like we sort of bulldozed you a little bit. This became an eggs show. So if you've got anything else you want to pump in there, go crazy.
I mean, you guys, even through talking, you guys answered most of my questions that I had. I think it's a good crossover show. There's always going to be one that is a little heavier than the other, but that's fine by me.
Cool. Well, we'll do it again sometime, maybe a little closer to Creative South, or if we're out there, maybe we'll catch you and do a little live segment or something.
That would be even better.
And we'll maybe come on your show and just do your show. We'll let you be boss.
That'll work too.
All right, cool. Well, so for more information on Jason Frostholm from Creative South and Frostiki, go to creativesouth.com or frostiki.com. You can find him at jfrostholm. That's JFROSTHOLM on just about every social network.
Yep.
You can find the Creative South podcast on Twitter and Facebook at Creative SO Pod, Creative South Pod. So CREATIVSOPOD. And on everything for the conference, for the Creative South Conference, which is in Columbus. Is that right? Columbus, Georgia?
Yep. Columbus, Georgia.
Is Creative South GA on all the socials. So with that, for more information on me, R2 Media Group, whatever, just go to r2mg.com.
For me, you can go to djontic.com. That's ONTIC.
And find more information about the Eggs Show at eggscast.com or at Eggs Show on Twitter and Instagram. So with that, Jason, thanks so much. Appreciate the co-show.
Yeah.
Glad to catch up with you.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys, and go out and hug some necks.
You betcha. In fact, Mike's got to watch out here. I'm going to give him one right before we get out of here. So, all right, cool. And with that, we'll see everybody next time.